and welcome to another pen video from me, Penultimate Dave. So here I have another inks comparison video, and this is green inks comparison number 6. So I think with that, let's go and swab up some of these inks. So I get a lot of questions on how I do these ink videos. So I decided I would add this to the front of each of the ink videos. I put links in the description, but I know some of you watch this on TVs or mobile devices, so you don't get to see this. So first off, the paper is the number one question I get asked. What paper do I use for these ink comparison videos? So this is the original Tomoe River. This is 52 GSM, and it is the white, not the cream, the white. Where possible, I try to go for the white because the cream can actually change the color of the ink just a little bit. So this is Tomoe River 52 GSM in the white. A lot of people get confused as well because I have what looks to be a grid on this page, and it's actually an Oxford Optik pad. These are the pads that I actually use when I'm writing my writing samples for pen reviews or in my currently ink. So they have these little squares up here. I just use that because it's a good guide for me. When I put this very thin sheet of Tomoe River over, I can actually see squares, so it helps me write a little bit sort of straight on the page. Not always, but sometimes it does. The other thing that I also have is I have a bottle of water, plain water, and I dip my nib in here. So for consistency, I use the same fountain pen, or I guess it's not a fountain pen, it's using a fountain pen nib though. This is a 3D printed pen from William Shakour in the UK. So he prints this material 3D, and it has a number 8 size Bock nib which I can unscrew, and you can see there. So it is just a dip pen holder for a number 8 size Bock nib, and the idea is I want to have consistency with the writing sample. So I use this, I dip it in the ink, I write, and then I will dip it in here, and I will rinse the nib off several times, and I will dry it, and then at that point I will then go on to do the next ink swatch and the next writing sample. So there you have it. That's how I do my ink swatches. So I just wanted to show you that here. Now on to the ink comparison video. So the first ink here on this ink comparison video is Diamine Smoke on the Water. Now this is a bit of an interesting ink. So let's do an ink swatch. Now this is a green ink, although it's more of a greenish blue or bluish green, I would say. I'd say very close to maybe a teal colour. Now, it does have some wicked sheening properties. I'll do a second pass over the top half, just to show the difference between a wet and a broad, or a dry and a narrow writing nib. But I want to try and get some of that sheening property out here. And I can already see it sheening as well. So this is Diamine, and it is Smoke on the Water. Now this is, I believe, a Diamine, a German exclusive. So you can only get this from German retailers. I did get this a number of years ago. The next ink here is DeAtramentis, and it's olive green. So we'll do an ink swatch here. Now, I'm not a great fan of olive green. At least I haven't been up until maybe now. I think it may be a green that I do need to revisit, although I do find it quite dry. We'll do a second pass over the top half, and that will just show the difference between a wet and a broad, or a dry and a narrow writing nib. So this is DeAtramentis, and it is olive green. And I'd have to say that I do actually prefer the ink writing sample more than maybe the ink swatch. I do find the ink swatch a little bit too light a colour. The next ink here is Akkerman Dutch Masters, and it's Van Huysum's Sapgroen. So we'll do an ink swatch. And I do find that this is a much more lovable green, at least from my perspective. It's a lovely light green, a little bit of a grassy green. We'll do a second pass over the top half just to show the difference between a wet and a broad, or a dry and a narrow writing nib. And this is Akkerman. And it is Dutch Masters, and it's Van Huysum's Sapgroen. And I know I didn't pronounce that correctly. I'm not very good at pronouncing foreign names, let alone foreign ink names. The next ink here is Akkerman Bezuidenwoudgroen. So we'll do an ink swatch. And this is a nice mid-green, I would say. A slight bluish tint to the green. But I do find that this is quite a nice green. We'll do a second pass over the top half just to show the difference between a wet and a broad, or a dry or a narrow writing nib. And this is Akkerman. Now this is not a Dutch Masters version, and it's a Bezuidenwoudgroen. But that again is a favourite green of mine. I do like it quite a lot. I do typically go towards the Akkerman Dutch Masters Van Huysum Sapgroen over the Bezuidenwoudgroen, but if I want a mid-green, I'd go for the Akkerman Bezuidenwoudgroen. The next ink here is Sheaffer Green. Now we'll do an ink swatch here. Now I will warn you now that this looks more blue than green, even though it is a green ink. And I know you can be colorblind, and I do think somebody at Sheaffer is colorblind, because this to me is not a green ink. So I'm doing a second pass over the top half just to show the difference between a wet and a broad, and a dry and a narrow writing nib. But honestly, I would say that that is not a green colour. Now, it will dry maybe a little bit better, but to me, that's more of a blue colour. So this is Sheaffer. And it's Skrip Green. And I just want to show you here that you can definitely see it is green here on the bottle. And it says ink, and I believe GRN here, GRN on the barcode for green. So this is definitely an interesting green, I would say. Certainly not what I would expect from a green coloured ink. I don't know about you, but definitely doesn't seem green to me. And then the last ink here on this ink comparison is a Delta Green. And you can see this is a really old bottle of Delta Green. So let's see if we can redeem ourselves here. We'll do an ink swatch. And I'm just going to saturate that a little bit more. There you go. Now that to me would have been what I would have expected from Sheaffer Skrip Green. It definitely looks more like the green on the bottle of Sheaffer Skrip. Now I'll do a second pass over the top half just to show the difference between a wet and a broad, and a dry and a narrow writing nib. And this is Delta Green. But that is quite a nice green. I'd say definitely is a little bit more bluish than Akkerman Bezuidenwoudgroen, but it's certainly not as blue as Sheaffer Skrip Green. I think let's now take a look at these inks now that they have dried. So the first ink here is Diamine Smoke on the Water. Now, I did say that this was a green ink with a wicked red sheen. Can you see the difference between a wet and a dry writing nib? Well, I'd have to say, minus the sheen, it is extremely difficult to see. The only thing I would say is the more ink you put down, the more sheen you get. So can you see the difference? Yes, you probably can, but it's mostly because of the sheen. Now, is there shading going on in the pulled area? Yes, there is, but again, because of the sheen elements of this ink, it is quite difficult to see that. Is there any sheen? Yes, there is. So if you like a teal coloured ink and you want some wicked red sheen to it, and you can even see that there on the writing sample as well. So if you want a teal coloured ink with, or a green coloured ink with a wicked red sheen, definitely Diamine Smoke on the Water, which is a German exclusive ink, is probably the ink that you want to check out. The next ink here is DeAtramentis Olive Green. Now, I'm not really into olive green colours. I don't really know why. I just don't like the olive colour of green. Now, I do like green olives. I do like eating them. I do like the taste of them. But still, I'm not that much of a fan of the olive green colour. So I don't know if you are the same as me, but it's just, for some reason, I just do not like the colour. A little bit like I'm not really interested much in teal colours as well. So can you see the difference between a wet and a dry writing nib? Definitely you can, because there is a huge difference here. Can you see any shading? There is some shading around the pulled area, and I will show that up close. Is there any sheen? No, there is not any sheen. But I would say that I do actually prefer the writing sample on a wet nib. So maybe this will be, I'll need to find a pen that is a green coloured pen or an olive coloured pen more so, that I could put that ink in. Or maybe I'll just put it in a demonstrator and give it a try. But I think I'd have to do it in a wet writing nib. The next ink here is Akkerman Dutch Masters van Huysum Sapgroen, and I do love this ink a lot. I do have several bottles of this ink, and when I say several bottles, this is not a 20, not a 30, not a 50, not an 80 milliliter bottle. This is 120 milliliters. So I've got 240 milliliters, or I did have when I bought it. I have a lot less than that now. But this is an ink I really do like. Can you see the difference between a wet and a dry writing nib? Definitely you can. There is a huge difference. Can you see a lot of shading? There is a lot of shading in that pulled area. Now, is there, if I show up close, is there any sheen? I want to say it's trying to sheen around the edges of that pulled area. It's just not able to do so. And typically most green inks, I find, do not sheen much. And you're not seeing anything in that writing sample either. The next ink here is Akkerman, and this is Bezuidenwoudgroen. So this is a 60 milliliter bottle, not 120 milliliter. But again, I do have a couple of those bottles. So I do have 120 milliliters of ink of this, or did have when I bought it. Actually, I think I actually bought 3 bottles, and I have gone through one of them already. Can you see the difference between a wet and a dry writing nib? Yes, definitely you can. It is night and day. You can really see the difference. Can you see any shading going on? Yes, there is shading in the pulled areas. So if you've got a wet writing nib or a broader nib, you're going to see shading there as well. Now, if I show you up close, can you see any sheen? Again, I want to say it is trying to sheen a little bit around the edges, but again, it's not really able to do so. You can see the writing sample there. It's a lovely green colour, at least for me, but it doesn't really sheen. But it's, again, in most cases you don't normally expect a green ink to sheen. The next ink is a Sheaffer Skrip. I want to say green, but it looks blue to me. Again, I don't know why Sheaffer have created a blue ink that is being called green. To me, it's definitely a green with blue. The only thing I would say about this is if you look at the writing sample actually does look more greener than blue. So I think that's probably why they called it Sheaffer Skrip green and not Sheaffer Skrip blue. Can you see the difference between a wet and a dry writing nib? Definitely you can. Again, it's night and day. Can you see shading? There's definitely shading in that pulled area. If I show it up close, you'll see that there. Is there any sheen? Yes, a slight amount of sheen around the edges of that pulled area. And then the writing sample definitely does look a little bit more on the greener side. So yeah, maybe it is a green coloured ink. Certainly it's green in its name. So that's why I included it here in this ink comparison video. And then the last ink here is Delta Green. Now Delta have long since closed its doors. The original founders or partners split. Some of them went to and launched Leonardo, and others launched other companies, Italian companies as well. So like Nino Marino. So this is an interesting green. You're not going to find it anywhere unless somebody is selling an old bottle. Can you see the difference between a wet and a dry writing nib? Yes, you can. Not as much as maybe these other two inks, but you can see the difference. Can you see shading? Yes, there is shading in that pulled area as well. Can you see any sheen? Now, again, I'm not really seeing any sheen. And likewise, I'm not seeing it in the writing sample. But it is an interesting green. It's got a little bit more of a blue tint to the green, I would say, compared to, say, Akkerman Bezuidenwoudgroen. But definitely a lot less blue than Sheaffer Skrip green. So there you have it. That's my green inks comparison number 6 video. If there are any of these inks that you like, do let me know in the comments below. Likewise, if there are any other greens you'd like me to check out, then do let me know in the comments below. So that's my green inks comparison number 6 video. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next pen video. Bye bye.